Hey, good morning, everybody. Mr. Andy here, the St. Johns County Public Library System, and with me is Miss Emily Jane, archaeologist with the Florida Public Archaeology Network. And we're going to talk about archaeology and excavation and have some fun and even do a cool experiment at the end. So make sure you have your supplies. Hopefully you've got the list from our web link. If you don't, we'll go over it real quick. So while we're talking, you can gather your supplies so you can dig along with us. Good morning, Miss Emily Jane. How's it going?
Good morning. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm great. I'm excited to learn about archaeology.
I'm always excited to talk about archaeology, so this is awesome.
Very cool. So let's get right in it. What's happening here?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit about archaeology, what it is, and how we find sites, how sites are made, and how we excavate sites. So I'm going to deputize everybody watching to be an archaeologist here for the morning, and I'll put that materials list up here for everyone. For the experiment at the end, you'll need 2 pieces of bread, some peanut butter, and if you're allergic to peanut butter, you can use a different kind of like sunflower seed butter or frosting or things of that nature, jelly, sprinkles, and then we need a straw, which is going to become a very important archaeological tool, a knife or a spoon to help you make and excavate your sandwich, and of course, you know, some napkins are always nice to have. Archaeology can get a little sticky and messy sometimes.
Oh, yeah. So I'm wondering, after this experiment, how many people are going to continue putting sprinkles on their peanut butter and jelly sandwiches?
Maybe we will all learn something new and exciting to do. So what is archaeology? What do you think archaeologists do?
Well, living in St. Augustine, I get to see evidence of archaeologists, and it seems like they're doing a lot of digging.
This is true. We do a lot of digging, but we're digging for things in particular, and we're trying to study something very specific in the past. What do you think it is?
Well, from my understanding, you're looking for evidence of people who used to live here a long time ago and stuff that they had that may be buried right beneath our feet right now as we speak.
Awesome. Yeah. So archaeologists are trying to study people from the past through the things that they left behind. So archaeologists are all anthropologists, and anthropologists study humans and human culture. But what makes archaeology really special is that we study material culture. So we study people's things to try to learn about them. So if I left you right here and I came to your house, are there things in your house that would tell me a little bit about how you like to spend your time?
Sure. You'll find lots of books, music instruments. Trying to think what would last a really long time if it was buried underground. I guess
also something important to think about with archaeology.
Sure, because a lot of things don't last, like this bag of goldfish crackers will not be here 100 years from now.
Probably not.
Even my wooden upright base may or may not be here 100 years from now, but parts of it might be, some of the metal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so archaeologists may find those little pieces of things. It's something good to think about. We don't usually find something whole and intact. A lot of times we like to look through people's garbage, because garbage can teach us a lot about what people do and what they ate and the things that they were using. So we usually find pieces of the past, right? Little clues. We're like detectives, right? We walk into a crime scene and we try to figure out what was going on in the past. So all of these clues and these little pieces are called artifacts. And an artifact can be anything a person made or anything a person used. So if I found a shell, do you think that could be an artifact?
Possibly, if it was, I mean, it could just be a shell, or it could be something that might have been used as a tool.
Yeah, so if we can see that a person made the shell into a tool, if we can see that the person made it into a bead or carved art onto it, right, that's good evidence that a person used it. If we can tell that a person cracked it open and ate that oyster that was inside of it for lunch even, then it's considered an artifact. So it has to have evidence of that human use or modification that's there. And of course, other things are a little more obvious, right? A piece of pottery or something made out of glass, right? That's a little more obvious that a person made it. And we do a lot of digging to find these artifacts, especially here in Florida. But do you think we go out and just dig and throw dirt and soil everywhere and go really fast?
No, no, you have to be a little more careful than that, right?
Yeah, so why might we dig slowly and carefully?
Well, you don't want to damage any evidence you find.
Exactly. Old things can be very fragile. So I found the very first time I ever put a shovel in the ground doing archaeology, I found a piece of pottery that was 4,000 years old. And I got really excited and I was like, ah, pottery. And you know what I instantly did?
Broke it in half.
I broke it in half. Yes. So even when we're trying to be good archaeologists and slow and careful, things are very fragile. The other thing to think about is that an artifact could be something the size of the Titanic. It could literally be the Titanic, right? That's something a person made and used and was left behind. It could also be a tiny, tiny little seed bead. So if we're digging really fast and carelessly, are we going to see that tiny seed bead?
No, it's going to get tossed aside.
Yeah. So digging slowly, digging carefully, and digging systematically. So archaeologists are all scientists. And in order for science to be really good and trusted, we need to be able to replicate results. So if you did a science experiment, you usually do it a couple different times, at least 3 times, to see if you get the same results, right? And then I may read about it and go, that's interesting. And then I'll do the same experiment to see if I come up with the same results. Well, archaeologists, our experiments are essentially the holes we dig. So if I dig a hole, do you think you could go redig that exact same hole?
I would think so, but hopefully you've already found all the stuff in it.
Exactly. I couldn't put everything back into that hole, right? Exactly the way that it came out.
No.
So you could go remove the same soil, but it wouldn't be excavating the same site. It wouldn't be digging the same hole, right? So archaeologists have to document everything really carefully, and our notes become the way that other archaeologists can kind of recreate our experiments. So we dig very systematically. A lot of us dig in 10 centimeter layers, so it's about 5 inches at a time, and then we'll stop and take a lot of notes and do drawings and measurements and all sorts of things. We screen all of the sand and dirt that we dig up to see if there's artifacts in it. And we label all of the artifacts, where they came from, which hole, how far in the ground they are, right? All of this is important information that we call context. Have you heard that word before?
I have. You want me to explain what it means?
Yes.
Yeah. I guess context is how something fits into a picture or time period.
Yeah, so a lot of folks, a lot of you guys may have heard the word context in the context of context clues, right? When you're reading and you're trying to figure out what a word means. Do you look at just that one word? Do you stare it down until it gives you its secrets?
No, they start to look funny after a while if you do that. But you look at it in comparison to the words around it and how they're used to help you understand the meaning, because a lot of words have multiple meanings. Like a seashell can be many things. Is it a shell? Is it a tool? I guess going with the context of the condition it's in and where it's located can help you get better context.
Exactly. We want to see the whole site. We want to see everything that was next to it. So finding a shell on the beach makes it maybe less likely to have been an artifact than finding it at an archaeological site next to a whole bunch of other things that people used from the past. So context is really important, and that's really what we're trying to record and document when we're doing a lot of our work when we're excavating.
Very cool.
So what sort of tools do you think archaeologists use?
Well, the shovel, that's the easy one. And that cool sifty thing with the screens where you get to find the treasures in the dirt, that's another one. I guess there's lots of paper and drawing materials. Photography, do you guys take a lot of pictures?
We do. The cool thing about archaeology, I like to say that we beg, borrow, and steal all of everybody else's best tools. So we use lots of different things, and we use photography. We started using things like laser scanning and photogrammetry to document sites. We use GPS and GIS, so geographic information systems, to help us with mapping. We use things like ice cream scoops because maybe that's the best right-shaped kind of scoop to get that little bit of dirt out of that weird tiny hole that you're working on, right? So anything can be really helpful to an archaeologist. Of course, the first thing that comes to mind, shovels. So we do use kind of big regular size shovels, spades and flat shaped shovels. The most iconic tools are, of course, our trowels, and every archaeologist has their own favorite trowel, and they're very attached and protective to them. You'll see we have pointed trowels, and we also have square trowels that we call margin trowels. And these help us dig very slowly, a lot of fine detail. Do you think I'm going to move a lot of dirt with these?
No. Well,
Yeah,
eventually, but no, it's going to take a long time.
yeah, so we use these when we get in there and really start scraping and digging even slower and more carefully to make sure that we don't miss things. And as I say, we use regular size shovels, and we'll talk a little bit more about shovel testing. So we can dig smaller holes just to kind of sample a site to see everything that may be there. But we also even use really big digging tools like excavators and backhoes. So you'll see in this photo at the bottom, Phil's working hard with a shovel. But that whole area behind him, he didn't have to clear with that little shovel. We can go in and strip off kind of the topsoil or the very top layers where there's not a lot of artifacts or anything in there, and that can help us get down to the good stuff at the site a little bit quicker. Tape measures, right? We want to keep track of things in a scientific and systematic way. Do you think my tape measures are in inches or centimeters?
I would guess both.
Some archaeologists use both. Most commonly, we use centimeters, though. We're scientists, so we use the metric system. And we have a variety of different types of tape measures, some that unfoil. And these straight ones are really helpful because they kind of retain their shape. So if you're trying to measure things against a wall or something. And we use big spooled tape measures, too, if we're working at a really big site. So. And then one of my favorite tools we borrowed from folks who look at color, and this is the Munsell color chart. And this helps us identify what color dirt is. So if you had to look in the top photo at the kind of circle outlined in the middle, what color would you say that soil is?
Grayish brown.
But grayish brown can be a lot of different colors still.
I
don't
know.
have my actual Munsell book, but I'll bring out my nerdy coffee mug. These are all shades of grayish brown, right? But they're all pretty different.
Yeah. Okay.
Can help us.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
I was digging a hole in my backyard the other day, and I got through about a foot or more of the grayish brown, and then suddenly the ground turned bright orange. Everything below it was bright orange. What does that mean? Or what would that mean, possibly?
Well, it could mean that you have a lot of topsoil on top of some other dirt, or maybe they brought in the orange dirt as fill and put topsoil on top. The different layers can tell us, something different happened, or, different materials were moving around, different people were doing different things. But that's good to know. We're always looking at those layers, and there's changes in the soil because those can be in and of themselves. So.
Okay. Yeah, I always wondered about that. I live like just a couple blocks from the water downtown, and I can't imagine there'd be that much fill dirt in my yard, but there's definitely a lot of topsoil from the leaves of the trees and stuff like that. So I was just curious.
Yeah, I mean, people have filled in things historically downtown. There's a certain point where like the whole bayfront's just been filled in, so you never know.
Okay. Like for construction projects or
I mean, people
roads
had issues
and stuff.
with roads and things, but people also had issues with downtown flooding in the past, so that was one of the ways that they
that's an issue. Yeah.
built landscapes up. So
okay, cool. So it doesn't mean I found a latrine.
No, not unless it was good and stinky and had lots of other fun things in it.
No.
The most important tool an archaeologist can ever use is a pencil, right? Because once again, it's important to take all those notes and to document. And I always like to tell folks, if you're not taking notes, you're not doing science, you're just digging holes. So, important part of archaeology. So we're going to get to our experiment here, and in the experiment we're going to talk a little bit about how sites are formed,
Okay.
Because it can be really important to understanding, how a site was formed to be able to interpret what's happening at the site. And we're also going to think a little bit about where we find sites and how we can find the sites. So if you want to get all of your supplies ready.
Yes, I have my supplies here. Now, my background is funny and it makes me disappear occasionally, so I'm going to eliminate my background so you can see my supplies. And then we can get to digging.
Excellent. Well, we're going to have to build our sites today before we can excavate them, as is true of any site, right? It has to be formed first. So where do you think people want to live? Where do you think the most desirable places for people to live, even still today?
Most desirable places to dig? Is that what you're asking?
People to want to live.
Oh, to want to live. Oh, well, near water, I would think.
Near water. Do you want to live up on that bluff, or do you want to live down in the marsh near that water?
Oh, up on the bluff. Yeah.
Yeah. So well-drained soils next to water, right? Most desirable. That's where all of our $1 million houses are today, out at the beach or along the St. Johns River. So we're going to build our site on this nice, lovely bluff next to the St. Johns River here. And what we're going to start off is with a piece of bread, and this is what archaeologists call sterile soil. So this is soil where there aren't any artifacts in it. People haven't done anything. They haven't left any evidence of them living here. And if we dig down deep enough in a lot of places, we'll eventually find this sterile soil. We'll stop finding artifacts, right? So we're next to a river. But what happens to rivers every so often, especially during storms, when we get a lot of rain?
They can overflow.
They flood, yeah. And this is a really important part of the environment and of environmental cycles, right? Because all of that rain, all of that water floods up and the water goes away, but it leaves all that just wonderful river muck that's at the bottom of rivers, that thick, gross, mucky things. But what that becomes is really good fertilizer, right? It's got a lot of nutrients. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take our soil and we're going to flood it with some peanut butter scented river muck.
I like the sound of that, a peanut butter flood.
Get your muck out and spread it on your sandwich.
And super sticky and gooshy like the bottom of a river. All right, nice thick layer of river bottom mud. There's mine.
Excellent.
So you guys can do this at home with us. Make sure you have your bread and your peanut butter and your jelly and your stuff and things.
All right. So we have our lovely environment here. So because of all of that river muck, now the trees are getting big and we have palmettos growing and we have wild blackberries and all sorts of things, and all the animals want to go live there because there's good eatings for them, right? So we have a group of people wandering around. Some of the Native Americans that were here before the Spanish arrived. Do you know what they were called?
The Timucuan.
The Timucuan, yeah. So they're wandering around and they say, this place looks fantastic. We're going to stop here and we're going to hang out here. So what we're going to do is we're going to build an archaeological site. We're going to build a little camp from the Timucua. So if you want to get some of your sprinkles, and you can maybe build a circular building outlined with some of our sprinkles. You can scatter them. Maybe it's where they were making tools or processing animals or doing pottery. Or you can build the one thing that people always create, no matter where they live, no matter what time they live. What do you think people create?
They make a house or a home?
They do those things too, but
a fire pit or trash pit.
We make trash, right? So I'm going to put a nice big trash pit in the corner.
There we go. I made a square trash pit in mine, a big square. They're very organized people in my village.
Nice.
They like geometric forms.
Structure, put the trash over here. So their trash pits look a little different than our trash pits, right? Because we throw away things like plastic and metal. But they were throwing away things like broken stone tools and broken pottery and shellfish remains. So we oftentimes call it shell material here in Florida. All right, so the Timucua didn't stay there forever. They wandered on, found another spot. And that river, we have hurricanes coming through all the time, right? So it floods again. But things change in the environment. So this time it's gonna flood with some nice, sticky, goopy, blackberry flavored mud in my instance. So we're gonna take our jelly.
I've got blueberry flavored mud.
Nice. And we're gonna spread that over as best we can.
My mud wants to move the artifacts. Is that okay?
It happens. This is part, we call it taphophonic processes. So this is how sites are made, right? Things get moved around naturally. So
to do this properly, I guess you want to cover the whole thing like an actual layer of soil would be, right?
Well, you just want enough to see it. You know, like I say, things happen. Sometimes it gets covered up. Sometimes it might not, you know.
Okay.
It's okay. The best you can. It's a little hard to spread the jelly on top of the peanut butter too.
I'm noticing that. It's really moving my artifacts around. My nice square garbage pit is not so square anymore. But I guess that's, you know, how it works with erosion and the way things move around. And
yeah, things definitely move around. I mean, we also have things, you know, we have like burrowing animals that live here, like gopher tortoises, and they like to move artifacts around, or tree roots can push things around. So the ground is not a stable, you know, steady place like we may think it could be.
See, I made a big mess.
Oh, look at that muck.
I know, it's gonna be tasty when we're done.
So the next group of people that move into the area come in 1565, and they're led by, who do you think?
Is that Ponce guy?
It's not Ponce. He comes a little earlier.
I didn't know I was going to get a history pop quiz here.
Pedro Menendez, right?
Pedro Menendez, not Ponce. The other guy, Pedro.
Yeah, he comes a little later in 1565.
So librarians.
Starts this little place called St. Augustine, you know. But he also, you know, the Spanish come and they actually kick the French out of Jacksonville who were there, but then they start to explore the area and they go up the St. Johns River, and they actually set up a lot of farms, and they bring in cows, and they have cattle ranches and things. So what happens is their Spanish come and they bring a different type of artifacts, right? They don't have, they have metal tools, and they have glazed ceramics, and they bring things like cows and pigs and oranges to Florida. Can you imagine Florida once didn't have oranges?
No. Can't be.
Yes.
It's like no sunshine.
Yes. So we're going to add some more artifacts. We're going to build a little Spanish farm here.
Oh, cool.
So, you can use the same sprinkles. If you have some different sprinkles, you can do that.
I'm going to use little goldfish.
Ooh. So I'm going to build my
kids ate all the sprinkles, so I had to use what I could find. So I have Spanish goldfish artifacts.
Works.
Okay.
So I've added another big trash pit and a scattering of maybe some broken glass and nails from a building, something like that.
Ooh, cool.
So when we walk around, do we always see artifacts just sticking up out of the ground?
Not usually, but maybe after a big storm or something.
So sometimes we do, especially after things like storms. But what happens is we have topsoil that builds up over it. So you were mentioning earlier, you know, things like tree leaves that die and break down. Things can blow in, things just build up, right? So we have topsoil. So we're going to take our second slice of bread, and we are going to put topsoil on our site. And there we go. Now we have a lovely lot here
Ripe for digging.
Ready for digging. So, congratulations, guys. You wrote really awesome grants and you now have funding to excavate 1/4 of your site. So we're not going to do anything yet, but just imagine in your minds, we're going to cut our sandwich in quarters like this. So you can pick 1/4 to excavate. So
Cool.
which quarter do you want to pick?
I'm going to do the quarter where I put my really fancy rectangular garbage pit.
Oh, I forgot to
But I
tell
already
you.
knew it was there, so
We don't know that. We don't know
where
that.
it is.
So we didn't know where we had put all of the artifacts. Where would we decide to start digging? It's tricksy.
Well, do you pick a particular part of the map, like north or south, or do you just pick one spot and then move from that spot?
Well, so we can approach it several different ways. Sometimes we can look at the landscape. So if there was a big hole in my bread, maybe I could see what's peeking down underneath it. Or if one side was higher because there were a lot of artifacts mounted in that corner and it's pushing the bread up, right? Maybe I'd go for that corner. Sometimes we have historic documents. So maybe we have a map of that Spanish farm and we know where their house was. And so we can go target that area. But sometimes we just don't know. And so what we do is we'll do a shovel test survey. So we will take our big shovels and we'll dig really small holes. And this is a way to kind of get a snapshot of what types of material are throughout the sandwich. So this is where we're going to take our straws. And remember, we dig systematically. So we're going to try to go maybe 4 across and 4 down. And we're going to stick our straw in our sandwich. And if you turn it and you pull it up, sometimes you get material.
So you just pick a spot you want to work in, push it in, and do you turn it while you're pushing it in, or just push it in and turn?
Yeah, if you push it in and turn it, and then it'll help you, and you'll pull up kind of this nice sediment core here.
I got a little sediment core. I did go all the way through. I have very soft bread. It's smushed a lot.
And we want to look to see if we can find artifacts in there. We can find evidence, people, at our site.
How do you get it out of the straw?
I usually just squeeze it out.
You can just blow it?
You can try blowing it.
Just be careful where you're aiming.
Yes.
Oh, it worked. And look, it came out. There's my little sample, my soil sample.
Yeah. And you can see kind of the layers that are there, right? You can see the bread and the jelly.
Definitely. It kind of reminds me of the ice core samples you see in those movies where they drill down with a tube and pull out sections of ice. It's kind of the same thing. It's just a different material.
Yeah.
But I can definitely see the bread and the soil peanut butter and then the stuff and things.
Or different river mucks. Have you found any artifacts yet?
I don't think so. We'll keep trying very methodically.
Yes.
Try not to eat the evidence while doing it.
And while you do that, I'm just going to show everyone, we have a link that we've included that has a worksheet that you can use to document your science, right? It looks like this, and we'll have the link included with the video. And so we've drawn out what the shovel tests look like for you. And what you can do is you can mark them where you find artifacts. So we call this a positive shovel test. And where you don't find artifacts. And we call this a negative shovel test. And so you can label them however that works for you. And then you will know, where you found what you found.
I found an artifact.
Woo!
It's an ancient Indian piece of candy with sprinkles on the end.
There you go.
I'm going to document that.
Can be tasty sometimes, right?
It's very tasty. I didn't know archaeology tasted so good.
All
So how are
right.
you guys doing with your bread? Did you find anything cool?
So once we kind of dig this, we can now see where artifacts may be, where they may not be. So does this change your mind as to where you think we should go excavate?
Well, I found an artifact in mine, so I think this is a good place to dig.
Yeah. So we look at two things with this, and these are our big technical science terms: artifact distribution and artifact density. And so what we're saying there, artifact distribution is where did you find the artifacts across the site? And artifact density is how many did you find? So if I found one artifact in this shovel test and I found 20 down here, where do you think I should go excavate further?
Definitely down where the 20 were.
Yeah, may have more information, right? What if the 20 were little crunched up pieces of brick, but the one up here was this really cool piece of ceramic, piece of pottery?
I guess the pottery? I mean, if you can date the pottery?
Yeah, so pottery can be, we call it diagnostic. We can date it, we can figure out where it came from. Often we can figure out who might have made it. I really like pottery, so I'm gonna go for the pottery. But what if our research question was about brick technology? I have a coworker who studies bricks and how people made bricks and how people use them. She's gonna go for those brick fragments over that pottery,
I would
right?
think so, yeah.
So there's lots of things to think about where you're going to go dig. What are you trying to learn about the past? What kind of materials are you finding? What may have the most information to give us? And so that can be kind of where we decide to go work.
Okay.
So we're going to excavate now. So pick which quadrant of your sandwich. Remember, we're going to draw the imaginary line in half both ways.
Yeah.
And then we're going to excavate. And archaeologists, once again, we go slowly and we dig in layers. So we don't want to cut all the way through the sandwich on the first go, right? We want to cut just through the top layer and try to remove it layer by layer.
Very methodically and carefully.
Yes.
So do we do the whole quadrant? Or just a small section of it?
We're going to cut the whole quadrant.
Okay.
And we're going to try to just cut what we want to dig, because we want to leave the rest of the site intact, because people come, we have lots of new technology that gets developed. And so we want to leave the rest of the site where people who have better tools and better ideas may be able to come back and work in the future.
Gotcha.
But if we go and use a backhoe on it, they won't be able to find anything, right?
No. So for our kids at home, basically you're just cutting through the top piece of bread only. That's your top.
Yeah, we want to cut the top piece of bread, and we just want to make 2 cuts towards the middle of the sandwich versus cutting the whole sandwich in half.
Can we eat the bread?
Sure. So we'll pull back and look, we can see what we found. I have some Spanish trash pile here, sprinkle artifacts, and I have some
stuff.
Blackberry river muck.
Yeah. Oh. Seeing river muck and fish.
Fish. That's cool.
Well, it's a
so we can work on excavating. We can try to scrape away the next few layers and go, keep going down until we find more. And then once again, we have that cool worksheet, because if we're not taking notes, we're not doing science, right? So you can draw what you find in your sandwich there, so that we can document our work. You can take lots of photos and make a 3D model of it. Even you can do all of the documentation that you would like, but we just want to, put on paper what we've found.
Very cool.
So just to think a little bit about what we've done here, right? We were digging slowly, carefully. We're trying to only disturb one area of the site. We were able to see some of the layers because of all of this. What would happen if I took this nice sandwich site and I put it in a blender?
You'd lose everything.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to see any of those layers. I wouldn't be able to
No.
figure out where the artifacts came from. And so that can happen, you know, if we have bulldozer or backhoe or, you know, some of the farming things, right? If we're not digging carefully, things can get pretty churned up. And it's all about the context, right? It's all about finding the artifacts, where they came from, and documenting what's around them. And so that's why it's important to go slowly and carefully and to really work on our best archaeology skills. So.
Gotcha. Very cool. So, I loved it. I love it. Is that pretty much it for the experiment?
That's our experiment. So you are welcome to do with your archaeological site as you wish.
Well, we can put it all back together
Mm-hmm.
and pretend it's not there anymore, or we can just eat it. I like eating it. I'm gonna eat my. I never knew archaeology tasted so good. That's pretty awesome. Well, thank you, Emily Jane. That was really cool. I learned a lot. I hope you guys at home learned a lot. And we're going to post the link at the bottom of the video on the Facebook page. We'll put it in one of the comments so you can get to the documents and get to the paperwork and stuff, so you can do your proper science by writing down everything you discover while doing your experiment. Well, cool. Well, thanks for joining us. Florida Public Archaeology Network, do you guys go around town and do this kind of stuff?
So we usually do. Unfortunately, we aren't doing very much public programming right now, but you can check out our website, which is FPAN.us. And we have lots of free resources there. You can find us on Facebook, and we post videos, and we have lesson plans you can download that have fun activities. So lots of good resources available online.
Excellent. Cool. Well, thank you very much for hanging out with us today and teaching us about archaeology. And I hope you guys learned a lot. I hope you had some fun. And we'll talk to you again soon, I hope. Thanks a lot.